Hey everyone, welcome back to the Tango Banter. I'm Yelizaveta. Before we get started, I wanted to answer a common question that I've been getting lately, and that is whether I offer one-on-one virtual sessions. And in fact, I do. Right now, I'm actually doing a special training called Dance the Music that's all about training you to be able to embody the differences between the four major tango orchestras that you dance at the milonga: D'Arienzo, Di Sarli, Troilo, and Pugliese. So this training is really about musicality rather than vocabulary or technique, and really provides you with that insight into your own dance and how you can begin to stylize your dance to reflect the music more closely. If you're interested, check out the link in the show notes. And of course, you can reach out to me with questions. I only have 10 spots available for this training. So if you'd like to sign up, you have until July 31st to do so. All right, now we are launching today into a topic that I don't know if we realize how impactful this part of tango is on our life. I think it creates a lot of anxiety for us without us even knowing, and that is small talk. I think every time that those two words get mentioned, even outside of tango, most of the time people roll their eyes or they say something like, "Oh my God, I hate small talk." But it's a big part of our tango life, wouldn't you say? Like from the very first moment of walking into the milonga and being greeted at the door and seeing people that you haven't seen in a while, like from the very start, there is this confrontation with needing to do some sort of small talk. And I have to say, tango dancers complain about small talk all the time because we talk a lot about how we want deeper connection. We want to bypass the small talk. We don't want to waste our energy on something so frivolous and insignificant and small talk. And we want to wait and save our energy for something that's more of substance, right? But something that I noticed early on as an artist trying to break through into the collector scene in Dallas, Texas, and I was attending a lot of art openings, or even as a yoga teacher attending a yoga conference, I noticed that people who were really good at small talk were some of the most charismatic and powerful people in the room. They tend to be very easy at striking up conversations with strangers, and they also seem to be okay with being in sort of awkward, embarrassing situations. They also are able to make other people feel at ease. So it's kind of fascinating that this thing that we really don't like, would rather not do, at the same time is something that we have to engage with a lot. And that there's something in this skill of small talk that's very powerful, that I started asking myself if I could find ways of implementing that for my own benefit as a tango dancer trying to break into the community or trying to get dances. So what is it really about small talk that makes it so difficult for us, that's so uncomfortable? Why does it cause so much anxiety? This is what we're going to talk about in this episode. And I posed this question to my Facebook community a few weeks ago, which if you haven't joined yet, you can click on the link in the show notes and join so you can participate in the weekly discussions and polls, and also join my live discussions on these topics on Fridays. So I posed this question of like, what do you do in that space between the songs. You know, like when you take the embrace and you dance with somebody for the first time, or maybe not even for the first time. Maybe you've danced with them before, but maybe you don't have too much of a connection with them yet. So you finish the song and then you're just standing waiting for the next song to start. And there's just like a few moments there where, like, what do you do? What do you say? Typically I'll say something like, how was your day? Or, what's your name? Where are you from? Those kinds of things. But those are the questions I think that we're all very tired of. And honestly, they don't really stick in your head that much. So I asked, people what they do in those moments, and a lot of people said that they just freeze. It's actually a very common experience to just not know what to say. I wish I could tell you that after 15 years of dancing this dance, I don't have a problem with this anymore, but I'm still very much in that phase of just like feeling a lot of awkwardness in between the songs and not knowing what to say and not all the time, of course. There are days that I'm much more at ease and I feel like I have things to say. Or if I'm dancing with somebody whom I know already, we can talk about something that we have in common. But with people that I don't know, it's still very much of a challenge. And at the last big event that I went, I was actually really struggling to come up with something to say besides, so are you having a good time? It's like, is there anything else that I can come up with? So some people said that they rely on compliments, and that's kind of a good strategy. I definitely think complimenting somebody on something, a lot of times I'll compliment people on what they're wearing or maybe their cologne or their hair. I don't know. But that always breaks the ice and allows you to have a point of focus. But then also compliments can get a little weird because if somebody compliments you, then you feel like you have to compliment them, and that leads to awkwardness as well. So awkwardness is going to be there regardless of whether you have something to say or not. So some people said they wait for the other person to speak. That's sometimes an interesting place to be. I've definitely been in situations where I'm realizing they're waiting for me to speak and I'm sort of like, I don't know what to say. So whether we like it or not, we have to do it. And ultimately, a lot of the answers and a lot of the comments that I got were about this sentiment of like, I just want silence. I just want no words. I want that deep connection where you don't have to speak. And that's, I think, is the goal, right? Like we want to have those mystical tandas where no words are necessary. And I, definitely have a few of those in my memory where between the songs, the silence becomes part of the dance and it feels very intimate. It feels very sensual even because it's kind of unknown and it feels like a deeper connection for sure than going through small talk. But honestly, that's not the typical experience. For me, the idea that every tanda needs to have this really intense aura around it and we shouldn't speak and we can just stand there and breathe together, like that's a great experience to have. But to make it be the standard, I don't think is realistic because with most people, the connection just doesn't feel the same way. You might not feel like wanting to have this sensual experience with someone. Like I've been in situations where I can tell that the leader is feeling a lot more sensual than I am. I'm curious if this has happened to you before where you can tell that the leader wants to just keep holding you between the songs. I'll feel their desire to keep holding me and deeply breathing into my ear. And in those moments, it's like, oh, please, small talk, rescue me, you know? So in those cases, small talk can be a saving grace, right? That you can rely on the etiquette to kind of reset the energy. Why is it so hard for us to come up with something to say and make it interesting and brief? And, I get it. It's like we don't have that much time, right? It's only a few seconds we have between songs, and then the tanda itself is 10, 12 minutes, and then we're done. So there's like not really a desire to commit because it's going to be so brief anyway, and you're not going to remember what they say anyway. So there's this feeling of like not wanting to waste your energy. And finally, for me, at this recent event that I was at, and I was kind of having a hard time being original in my questions. And I was very low energy. It was that time of the month, and there's not much I could have done differently because physically I was just struggling to kind of keep going. So in that state, it just felt like work, right? When you come to the dance and you want to just chill and be in the zone and kind of get lost in the music. Maybe you're even in that state where like, I don't care who I dance with. I just need to be dancing. And in that state, it's kind of hard to then like pull yourself into that space where you're like, okay, I'm going to be curious and I'm going to ask this person questions about themselves or try to have a conversation or try to extend myself in some way. It feels like work. So understandably, small talk is not easy. I even think in life in general, people don't like it. People don't like doing it, having to do it. It's a very much part of life. A lot of times having to network or something, it relies on small talk. So it's paradoxical how tango invites and attracts people to it who are very introverted and who don't really want to be engaging in small talk, but the activity itself demands that small talk is part of the experience. I think it's very appropriate that we're challenged this way because tango in itself kind of pushes our buttons. And this is one of the buttons because all of us, well, not all of us, a lot of us are introverted and we don't like to extend ourselves. And yet we are required to do so because if we don't, we will not be able to participate in the whole ritual of the process. So what do we do? Well, how do we deal with that contrast, that seemingly irreconcilable relationship between those two opposites? There are times, and I wonder as I'm describing this, if you can think for yourself of examples like this happening, that sometimes I've had moments of small talk that were so fun and so effortless and so spontaneous that it didn't feel like work. And very quickly, the small talk ended up being a full-blown conversation that led to a deepening of relationship, that led to a number of amazing tandas and basically a furthering of a friendship. So there are moments for all of us, I think, when we are in this interesting state of flow where small talk just kind of happens. And maybe in those moments, we're not even registering the fact that it is small talk because it doesn't feel like it, because there's a level of engagement there that already makes it feel more relevant. I think there is a place for us to take responsibility and say, okay, there are times where small talk can become a bridge to a more meaningful conversation. So instead of focusing on this idea of like, I'm just going to wait until a deep connection drops in my lap, and I'm going to wait for that rare moment when I really connect with someone. Otherwise, I'm not going to waste my energy. Instead, flipping it and thinking of it as a bridge and realizing that, yeah, those magical connections are awesome, but the longer you dance, I think the more it becomes about us crafting those interactions and sort of creating them with our own ingenuity and our own will. So you could see small talk not as an opposite of deep connection and meaningful conversation, but more like the beginning of it, the starting point, the bridge from no connection to some connection, maybe even a testing ground to see what it's like to interact with somebody. In this way, I feel like our rituals and etiquettes around small talk are there to provide a landing strip into the milonga, into the social environment, right? Where it's like a transition between not talking, not interacting, to then having deeper connection. And if we see it in that way and we practice it, then it becomes more about skill. And how do you become more skillful at small talk? This is what I've been asking myself as I watched so many examples of this appear in my days as an artist and as a yoga instructor, seeing people who are really good at small talk and asking myself, like, what is it that they're doing that's different, that gives them their power? Now, I think the first thing that they have that's coming from a very genuine place that you really can't fake is the genuine interest and curiosity in the other people. Now, this curiosity doesn't mean that they want to be deeply involved with every single person that they meet and they want to have long-lasting friendships. Like, that's not really the energy. The energy is that in this moment in time, they are very committed to giving you their attention. That's how I've observed it. That's how I've read their energy. And they're really good at asking interesting questions. They're not necessarily the most philosophically interesting or deeply poetic questions. They might be something very silly even, but the right question can really break the ice and actually facilitate a deepening of connection very quickly, maybe even quicker than a deep conversation. It's interesting how difficult it is to come up with a good question that leads to interesting answers. I don't necessarily have the skill to do it all the time, but I can see it when it happens. And I've been trying to emulate it whenever possible. I'll give you a brief example of this recently. When I was teaching at an event, and there was a moment where the whole staff at the cafeteria that we were eating at, the whole staff came out and they were introducing everybody. And it was a very generic introduction of like saying hello, their, the names and what they're doing at this camp. And then the question to all of them was, and there was like 12 people, how do you like to eat your potato? So each person went down and answered this question. And the answers were so funny, and it created such an interesting vibe in the room, just how much everybody actually paid attention, because it was something that was different and it's something that everybody could relate to. Because immediately I started thinking about, well, how do I like my potato? And then after everybody had gone, everybody in the room for at least 10 minutes was talking about how they like to eat their potato. And suddenly, we were all very involved in conversation. We didn't know each other. This was at the beginning of the event, so there was not much in common. But suddenly, this simple question that has nothing to do with what the connection is going to lead to, or the dance floor, or tango, or the dance itself, and it created all this energy that everybody else was able to ride. So those kinds of instances, when they happen, when you can witness them, that's where the lessons are for us. It's like those kinds of questions stick with you. And in fact, I still have the memory of some of the answers because they were so unique, and it made the person very memorable and unique in my mind. I've played with some of that before in my tango years. For a while, I asked this question of, if you were an animal, what would you be? And that created some interesting conversations. I haven't pulled that one out recently, but I think the key is to come up with questions like that, that break the mold and give us something else to talk about besides where are you from and how long have you been dancing? And not to say that those questions aren't important, because I actually do think they serve a purpose, but to make our small talk more of a creative expression. And, we've talked a lot about this idea that the dance itself starts before you get on the dance floor. It starts at the moment of the capaseo, right? That connection, that intrigue, that mystery of what's going to happen, and the discovery of that connection, it starts way before we take the embrace. So small talk is part of that. It's part of that flow. And it makes sense that even this part of our experience needs to be treated as part of the dance in order for it to actually give us what we want, which is connection, ultimately. Of course, we don't want to be stuck in the small talk zone all the time, but it does seem like it's necessary for most of us to find those deeper connections. Now, in the spirit of small talk, I thought we would do something fun to wrap up this episode. And I want to ask you a question that maybe will lead to some deep conversation in the comments. And that is, how do you like your mate? I don't actually drink mate that much, but I'm curious if you do. Do you drink it out of the gourd, the traditional way? Is there any other way, some might say? And if you don't drink it, I want to know that too. Are you like me? So yeah, let me know in the comments. What is your preferred way of drinking mate? I hope you join me the next banter, where we'll talk about different dance forms and how tango relates to other social dances. Is it possible to benefit from studying other dances besides tango, or does it actually dilute your tango technique? Let's banter about this next week. Until then, ciao.